we have a little technical glitch. That's why my
Ah,
Instagram didn't start. It should start right in a second, and then we're good
there
to
we go.
go. There we go. We're live everywhere. Technical
Excellent.
glitches.
Happens all
So
the time.
welcome, everybody. A new edition of the Power Talks for Remarkable Females. I am Helena Demuynck. I'm your host. And my question today to you is, what if your leadership energy and focus is not in your planner or in your strategy, but in your pantry? Right. I'm here today with Amy Todisco. Amy, welcome to this show. I'm super thrilled to have you here. Can you tell
Thank you
us a
so
little bit
much.
more about yourself?
Sure. So I have, for the last 30 years or so, have been teaching people and empowering people to take their health back from our broken food system, Western medicine system, household product systems, to learn how to detoxify our food, our homes, our household products, and embrace holistic health strategies so that we can thrive and reduce our need for pharmaceuticals and doctors.
Mm. So, how did you first get into this world of green living and clean
This is
eating?
a good question. So I actually started having a fairly unusual childhood with a mom who was very interested in nutrition and a stepfather who was a chef. And I learned to cook
Oh,
from the age of about 8. And I
wow.
learned about organic food when I was 16 because I worked at a health food store in New York City. I grew up in New York City. And I learned about organic food and vitamins and supplements and a tiny bit about household products. But it wasn't until 1992 when I had my big aha moment. I was pregnant with my daughter, shopping at the health food store, my weekly shopping, and I came upon this little paperback book called The Non-Toxic Baby. Excuse me. And I'm standing there in the aisle just leafing through this little paperback, and my jaw drops. I cannot believe that there's all these legally allowed toxic chemicals in everyday household products. And I
Mhm.
thought, first of all, I felt incredibly vulnerable being pregnant at the time. And then I felt really angry. I thought, like, why, how is this allowed? Why aren't we being protected? This is in the US. And as I went on to learn more, I realized that we have so many toxic chemicals in our everyday life, and many of them we have control over. And so those are the ones that I've been focusing my attention on for the past 30 years is how to get rid of these chemicals in our food and our household products and our homes and in our lives altogether, and really focusing on empowering people as opposed to feeling like a victim.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's an amazing work that you do. It is so important because when
Thank
I
you.
think back to my childhood, I didn't have a clue about these things. My parents were not into these um, holistic and organic and healthy food or living. It was just
Right.
a very traditional upbringing, and I can imagine that a lot of us were not educated. School doesn't do that.
Oh gosh,
A
no.
lot of our caretakers don't do that. So it's like this aha moment, I think, for a lot of us, it comes when we feel sick, when we feel our
Typically.
energy is going, when we get our allergies or our asthmas or whatever that we get from all these toxins, right? So
Yeah.
I'm interested also for the people watching here or listening into, if there's any questions about that or any experiences that you want to share, please feel free to use the comment box to interact with us. We will
That
absolutely
would be
take
great.
this into this conversation. If you are watching or listening to the replay, you're also more than welcome to get your feedback or your questions in the comment box because we will be monitoring it and we will get back to you with anything that you need. But what's your experience, Amy? When do you feel that people, for example, clients of yours,
Mhm.
when do they find you? What's like their aha moment or their wake up
That's
call?
great question. So typically it's when, like you said, they have a health problem. And there are many people that don't even put together the connection between what they eat and what they're exposed to and having different health issues, whether it's allergies or gut issues or asthma, skin problems. Most people, they'll go to the doctor, and I've interviewed people for my podcast like this. They'll go to the doctor and the doctor sees one symptom and then sends them to a specialist for that problem, right? And so they're sending them to all these different specialists. Nobody's putting together the whole picture. it's, one person, and potentially it's because they're being exposed to things in their food and their homes. I just interviewed a woman last week who, she was only 24 years old, and she was living in a rental apartment that had visible mold in the bathroom. And that was kind of the camel, or the straw that broke the camel's back, shall we say. She started to get so sick that she couldn't keep food down. She had incredible hives, itchy skin, and she did the whole thing of going to the doctor, being sent to all these different specialists, and she had to figure it out on her own. And she realized that by changing her diet and getting rid of the toxic chemicals, especially things with fragrance, that's a top one, she was able to heal herself. And so she has a whole different way of living, she and her husband, because she became aware and she made changes.
Yeah. Now, there's so many things in our houses that are toxic that we are not aware of, or maybe we are aware of them, but it's like, what can we do about it? I mean, I have like this wooden, I don't know how you say that in English, these wooden things on my ceiling.
Right.
Yeah. Have been treated. I don't know what they have been treated. You have paint. If you don't have like this special paint, you even have plastic paint, you don't know what is there. Yes. It's the things that your sofa is made of.
And the
even
carpets.
If you try to burn some incense, it can be toxic. If you want to have some nice smell in your house with essential oils, if you don't buy the organic ones, they can be toxic. So there's so many things that we are not aware of. Correct. So, and that we cannot get rid of, right? So
to some extent, yes.
Yeah.
Well, so usually I find that starting with food makes the most sense. And I'll give the other, and there's another piece too. So as I mentioned, fragrances, that's a huge one. Anything that has a synthetic fragrance, you definitely want to get rid of. And especially if it's a plug-in air freshener, your laundry detergent, whatever you're cleaning your clothes in is actually on you 24/7. So that's a good one to swap out, right? But food is probably the easiest one to start with. And typically I talk to people about starting simply, looking at what produce they're buying at the store. And there is something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 list. And that's put out by Environmental Working Group. And I actually have that list in my free 5-day green living challenge. And it tells you which produce has the highest amount of pesticide residues. And it's something like spinach and strawberries and blueberries are on the top of the list for most toxic. So those are the ones that people would want to prioritize getting certified organic.
Hey, wait a minute. And then blueberries are considered to be very healthy.
Yes.
You should eat blueberries.
I know.
Amy.
I know. So this is the issue. And it goes so, there's so much information. It's overwhelming. I get why people are overwhelmed, why they're frustrated, and they feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to do all this research like I did for 30 years. And I'm still learning new things even today, right? But the thing that's troubling is that there's a lot of foods that are marketed as natural, and people associate that with organic, which it's not, or free range, which is really means nothing. There's so many different labels and claims, and we call that greenwashing, right? So it's a manufacturer's making the product look better than it actually is. So that's why I start people with that, the Clean 15 list and the Dirty Dozen list. So the Clean 15 tells you which produce has the least amount of pesticides, so you don't have to worry as much. And so if you're on a budget, you can, buy those conventional, and that's things like avocado, pineapple, onions, that kind of thing. So that's a really easy way for people to start.
Okay. Now, you're talking about fresh fruits and vegetables. A lot of people buy produced food, super produced food. What's your opinion about that?
Yes. So
I guess I know, but
yes, I think you're going to guess. So processed foods are incredibly destructive for so many different reasons, but there are ingredients in processed foods like seed oils, and especially when they're conventional, that are very, they create a lot of inflammation in the body. There's a lot of pesticides in conventional foods. There's genetically modified organisms. There are weird sweeteners, like instead of sugar, it's high fructose corn syrup, or, awful non-sugar ones, like that's in diet sodas and diet products. There's so many ingredients. And a lot of times you can't even pronounce some of them when you look at the label, right? So what I usually tell people is don't look at the front of the package. That's going to tell you what they want you to think. Look at the back, read the ingredients, and figure out, okay, does this sound like something that I've ever heard of?
Mm.
And if not, then avoid it. But your best bet is to go with certified organic, with the caveat that I will tell you, there are some certified organic foods that are junk foods. And I've been guilty of trying them. I tried there at one time, Doritos were made with organic ingredients. Now I've noticed that's disappeared. I did try them. They were very addictive, which is the case with all these processed foods. And they leave you feeling like you're still hungry because you're not nourishing your body. You're not giving yourself the
You're
nutrients.
filling yourself with non-food, right?
Exactly. And that's what, creates all the obesity problems and, all sorts of health issues, blood pressure, cholesterol, heart disease, anxiety, gut issues. There's so many different things that these kinds of foods are doing to us.
Yeah.
It's not good.
And Amy, a lot of us, we don't have a lot of time. We rush to the supermarket. So we take what we're used to take, and we don't really do these things. So what worked for me was building this in gradually. And because I remember when I started really going into this, the first 3-4 times that I made my groceries, my shopping list, it took me an hour, because I was buying things that I never heard of before. And so I was Googling what it was, but then I made my list. And then the next time I added to my list. And so I basically invested time in the preparation, and then of course also in the shop, until I had like a safe list of the vegetables and the fruits, and then also everything that's packaged, in order to bring that home and systematically also get rid of all the rest. And so it was building up, because if not, I thought it was very difficult to really change that. Not only that, also to educate your family, because they are used to have this type of breakfast and this type of lunch and this type of in between. And then especially I know some of these examples, especially if you change that with teenagers, they're like, Mom, what are you doing? I don't want that. I don't like that. Things like that. So it's not only a decision and an intention, it involves also a complete strategy. Like, how am I going to implement that also with the people that I live with, without being the one imposing things, or being the teacher, or being the one that is forcing them into a certain way. So it is pretty complicated, right? As systemic thing. Right.
So you bring up such great points, and that's why I do the work that I do. So I created these online courses specifically to give people all of those tips and tools so that they can implement these strategies, so that you don't have to spend all the time and the frustration and the money and trying to figure it all out. And that's why I'm actually launching this 12-week program on clean eating that will go along with the online course, so that I can help people implement it even more quickly and easily. And we'll talk about those kinds of things, like, how do we get our family on board, and what are some of the things, to avoid with these different label claims, and how do you shop on a budget and, buy organic food without breaking your pocketbook. So I think it is a very big topic. And as I said, I think earlier, I'm still learning new things even after 30 years. I'm constantly coming up with, and every time I come up with something new, I pop that back into the course, so that I always am putting updates, so that people are getting, the most current information.
Yeah. And then, Amy, what are your tips for people who live on a kind of budget? Because we all know, if we go to a organic shop, or we buy organic food in the supermarket, when we come at the end of almost at the exit, you pay a lot more, right?
True. And it's changed a little bit, I would say, because food prices overall have gone up, at least in this country. Junk food is extremely expensive now too, right? But some of the tips that I usually tell people is, if you have any farmers markets in your area, or a farm stand that's growing certified organic food, go there first, because typically you'll pay less money and you'll get the freshest food. Because even in the supermarket, that organic produce often can be a week old before it even gets on the shelf. And, some of the tricky ways that manufacturers and store, owners do things, we're actually seeing stuff staying on the shelf longer. Looks as though maybe it's still fresh, but they've been putting coatings and sprays and all this kind of stuff to keep that looking good, even when it's no longer, got a whole lot of nutrition. So one of the tips I also tell people is if you don't have a farm to go to, or, can't get to the farmer's market, buy the certified organic frozen food, like the, broccoli and the peas and carrots and all that kind of stuff. And those usually are frozen at the peak of freshness. So I feel like you're getting, a much healthier product. And often those are less expensive than the fresh stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That also goes for the frozen fruits, right? The
Yes,
red
indeed.
berries and the blueberries and things like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And
What other
one of the
tips?
other
Yeah.
things I would say is growing your own. I mean, I know we're all busy
Yes.
entrepreneurs and business executives, but if you have a desire to get out in nature, on the weekends, for example, growing your own food is absolutely magical. I mean, I have access to all this incredible food that my husband grows for the most part. I do some of the farming, but mostly I'm running the farm stand in the summer. But I grow my own stuff in my own gardens around the house. And I do that because there is something so satisfying by taking a tiny seed and planting it in the ground. And then you get this incredible tomato plant. And when I take people for tours on the farm, they are so blown away by the taste difference. When you pluck a cherry tomato off a plant and eat it, it is alive with flavor. It's got life energy. It's the best that, it'll ever be.
Yeah.
And I've even been able to convert children to eating vegetables. I had this amazing family of French people that the children didn't even speak English. And I was told, though, that they didn't like vegetables. And so I'm leading them through the tour, and we go through the different rows and, pick a green bean and cherry tomato, all this stuff. And they're actually preparing it. And I thought, ooh, this is good. And then they had the lunch tour. So we followed it with a lunch. And I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, these kids aren't going to eat anything. I'm just going to have all this wasted food. But they actually ate the lunch, which is all vegetarian. And after the family left, I heard from the parents, and they said, our children now eat vegetables as long as we tell them that they're like Dave and Amy's. And so that just made me feel so good. So I think anybody that has even the slightest desire to grow some food of their own, you can even do it on a windowsill. As long as you have a sunny windowsill, you can put some herbs or, grow something that you really like, lettuce, for example. There's all kinds of ways and even indoors, if you have no sunshine, they now have these little hydroponic systems. I've got one that I use in the wintertime here in Vermont, and I put it in our sunny living room, and I'm growing my salad. So I'm growing cucumbers, tomatoes, and lettuce a lot of the times in this little hydroponic, which is just all water and nutrients. So there's all kinds of options for how you can do things, according to your schedule.
Yeah. And, Amy, that's such a beautiful concept as such, especially with the story you tell about the children that, didn't eat vegetables. Because if you grow your own vegetables, and I think it's also important as parents or maybe grandparents to understand that, and you bring your children or grandchildren in connection with nature, they understand that what they eat is something that has been produced by Mother Earth, right?
Yes.
While if not, they take it from the supermarket, and they think that, they don't see a relationship between, for example, what they eat and what grows, or if for meat eaters among us, they don't see the relationship between a chicken breast and the chicken.
Right.
In terms of also having more respect for what it is and how special it is to be able to do that. I don't want to offend vegans and vegetarians, but it is about the relationship that we have between what we eat and what is produced by Mother Earth, because a lot of children think that milk is coming from the fridge, right? And they don't know where it's coming from. They don't know where eggs are coming from, which is absurd.
Yes,
and that is such real.
That is such a good point. I remember when my daughter was little, and I lived in Massachusetts at that time, I signed her up for a Farmers Helpers program at a local Audubon. And they were telling us that so many of the children that come to that program had no idea that cows made milk or chickens laid eggs. And what I loved about that program is that we would go and pick eggs and then we'd turn them into pancakes, or we'd milk
Yeah,
a cow and then turn it into cheese. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is so magical that these children
exactly.
are getting to make these connections and actually tasting this stuff and learning at the
Mm.
same time. And I think, definitely when parents and grandparents bring their children and grandchildren into the garden and get them involved and then
Yeah.
get them involved in the cooking, it can open all sorts of
Yeah.
possibilities.
Absolutely. I think it's such a beautiful aspect of education to
Agreed.
let them, taste it, but also feel it, develop patience to see something grow, be creative to bring it in the kitchen or to dress it on a plate. There's so
Yes.
many elements that we can include in our food experience that make it fun and light and accessible also for children, and that make it
Yes.
like learning moments, connection moments, instead of this, hurry things where we pick whatever from the shelf and just put it on our plates and then preferably eat it in front of television or behind our computer. And
Yes.
I think there's so much to say about, recreating that experience
Yes.
in terms of stress relief, in terms of understanding that it is really contributing, because that's also basically what we were talking about, or how we said it. It is about reclaiming your power on what you put in your body, because our
Yes.
body is our temple. If we don't feed
Absolutely.
ourselves well, we don't have our cognitive and our mental and our physical and our emotional optimum state. And
Yes.
especially if we have responsibilities, and we all have responsibilities, it's not really helping us, right?
Yeah, and so there's a really important point I want to make that I remember when I was first getting into this, I would compare the cost between something organic and something conventional. And I would think, oh gosh, is it really worth the extra? And there's a lot of reasons why organic food is more expensive than conventional, and they're not really what you think they are. But the point that I want to make is that I look at eating organic food and grass-fed, grass-finished beef and wild-caught fish and organic poultry. I look at that as an investment in my health, and then I'm paying
Mm,
for it now as opposed to paying for it later. So knock on wood, I hardly ever get sick. I don't take any
mm,
pharmaceuticals. I'm 61. A lot of people tell me they think I look 45, and I feel like it's this kind of a lifestyle. And I use
mhm,
holistic, health tools, whether it's homeopathy or herbs or Ayurveda or, whatever, to help build my immune system. And also the understanding is that our bodies are designed to heal. We are meant
mhm.
to be thriving. And so if we give ourselves the right things, the right ingredients, and there's a lot of other pieces to it, of course, good sleep, exercise, all that sort of stuff. But you can start making a huge difference. And I think it's super important for people who run a business or, in work life, we may not make the connection between these things that we're talking about and how we're showing up. But imagine, if you're super stressed and you're eating crappy food, and so you're even more stressed, your gut is hurting, you've got brain fog. There's all kinds of different health impacts that, are coming from these different choices that we're making. And so if we want to be top performers, especially if we're, running our own business like you and I, um, if we make better choices, that's going to actually help us do a better job running our
Yeah.
business and moving forward.
Absolutely. Amy, I would like to wrap up the footing, because we have
Sure.
also the other part of the
Yes.
toxins. But I would want to say that we didn't give you the list of the 15 good and the 12 bad and all the stuff. But and we will come back to that later at the end of this
Yes.
episode. So stick with us. All the information is available on all the freebies and other URLs that we will provide you at the
Yes.
end of this episode. But I would really like to know, Amy, how can we get rid of whatever is toxic in our houses? Because for that, it feels like a lot more difficult than for food.
Yeah, I think it is in certain ways because there's, especially if you're renting someplace, you don't have very much control. And I felt that when I used to rent. So owning my own
Mm,
home feels more empowering, but not everybody can do that, especially these days. So some of the main things that I would say is if you can get rid of carpets, that is a really important step. And so that's for a variety of different reasons. New carpets well, let me just sort of talk about what outgassing is, because that's relevant to all of these different things. Outgassing is when these toxic chemicals, kind of vaporize into our air. And even the EPA here in the US tells us that the indoor air in our homes is actually more toxic than outdoor air, even in polluted cities, which is kind of a hard thing to believe,
Whoa.
but it's true.
Mhm.
And actually, when I was hired by Seventh Generation to lead their Household Toxins Institute, our goal was to actually hire toxicologists to test the household products, starting with the natural ones, to see that they actually were what they said they were, to make sure that they were not contributing toxins into the air. So beyond the carpets, you've got the new carpets are an issue with all the different things coming out of it, but even old carpets, they tend to harbor molds, anything you've walked in on your shoes, your pet's feet. So that is not particularly wonderful. So if you can replace it with a hardwood or a ceramic tile, or they have some beautiful natural cork. I did that once for my old house. I refinished the basement and had a beautiful natural cork floor that had a lovely, not topping, but sealant
Pattern.
that
Mhm.
is non-toxic, because that's an important thing. There are alternatives, like you mentioned, your beams and your ceiling. So typically that's probably covered by polyurethane, but there's some better ones that have no VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So there you can still have a beautiful looking home. It's actually probably even more beautiful and feels better to be in it when you're not adding all these toxic chemicals. But even for me, so I'm, this green living person from 30 years ago, I still have furniture made out of polyurethane and synthetic fabrics that ideally I'd like to get rid of. There's
Yeah.
not as many easy swaps for that. So I start where I can.
Yeah. So does it also help to air your house very often? Does
Absolutely.
that make a
Absolutely.
difference?
Yes. So every day, even in winter here in Vermont, I have the windows open, and we are
Mhm.
lucky in that my house has really good passive solar. So when it's sunny out, and even if it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit, if I open the window, I actually have to open the window because otherwise it gets too hot. But yes, getting airflow. And one of the reasons
Yeah,
why that's super important is these days, a lot of homes are made to be airtight for energy efficiency, which is great. The
exactly.
problem with
Mm.
that, of course, is you don't have any of the airflow coming through the cracks in the windows and the doors and all that we used to have. So airflow, yes, is wonderful to open the windows, at least 20 minutes a day, depending upon the time of year. If you can have them open all the time and you live in a climate
Mm.
like that, that's ideal. And here's a cool thing. I found on YouTube how to make my own air cleaning filter. So I got a box fan at the hardware store, like for $20. And I bought 4 of these HVAC filters that were called MERV 13. It was the particular microns, I guess, of the filter that actually filtered out bacteria, viruses, dust, all kinds of stuff. And I put the fan so that it was on top, and the 4 filters were like a box. So the fan's on top of it, and it's sucking the air through those sides, those filters, and cleaning the air. So instead of buying a more expensive unit, that's a really easy way, that's under
Oh, wow.
$100 that you can do.
That's the alternative for an air purifier. Is that what it's called?
So
Or
so you can YouTube, actually, I can, if somebody wants that set of instructions, just email me at amy@greenlivingnow.com, and I will send you the YouTube video that tells you how to do it. It's really easy. You just need duct tape, the 4 filters, and the fan. So
yeah.
that's a really easy way to do that.
Whoa. Okay. And so if I can, I'm just interested, if I can go back to the carpets, even
Sure.
carpets made from natural products like sisal or cocos, they're not good.
That's different. That's different. So usually those are not treated with anything, ideally.
Mm.
I mean, you have
Yeah.
to look at the manufacturer and see what they claim. And then if that doesn't say, I would, contact them and say, do you, spray this with anything? Is there any pesticides on here? But yes, those things should, and even natural wool, if it's not treated with anything toxic, can be a great
Yeah.
alternative. And then cotton rugs that you can wash in the washing machine, that's a great alternative too for little throw rugs.
Yeah. So what about our beds, the pillows and the mattresses
Yeah, that's a good one. So
and covers?
when I had the budget, I invested in a natural rubber bed that had organic cotton, and then I got a natural rubber topper because I like my bed softer. But that is a big source of issues because, most beds are made out of plastic with
Foam.
flame
Yeah.
retardants. And so all of that, while you're sleeping, you're smelling that stuff coming out of your mattress, as well as whatever you're washing your bed sheets and your bedclothes in. So that, I think I said at the beginning, swapping out what you're using for laundry detergent is
Yeah.
a really
You can buy
smart
those
idea.
organically. Those are very easy to find, right? Yeah.
To some extent. I mean, if people don't buy the best, most non-toxic because they're a little pricier, at least go with a fragrance-free, because the free and clear ones aren't necessarily clear and free of the toxic chemicals. So fragrance-free, though, usually means that they're not putting those synthetic fragrances in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
What
that's a
else?
good
What
start.
else can we do? Because I'm thinking of walls, I'm thinking of furniture, I'm thinking of sofas.
Yeah, so
Um,
walls are easy to switch to the no VOC paints. Those are at most hardware stores, at least in the US. I've found, a few different options. They're definitely a little bit more expensive, but you can paint a wall and sleep in that room the same day. You don't have to get out of there and wait for it to dry. So that's definitely an alternative.
and
And
does
like
it
I said,
cover what was there first?
oh yeah, it's just like regular paint. It works great.
Yeah, but I mean, does it cover the toxic paint that was there
Oh, I
before?
see what you're saying. Yes, to a certain degree. So there is, I think there's still products made by AFM that can cover, let's say, a lead paint. Now that's a tricky one. Lead paint, you really don't want to play around with. Ideally, you want to get
Yeah.
that professionally removed. But I think if it's been painted over for many, many years, unless it's cracking or, showing some signs of distress, generally
Yeah.
it might be okay. But I think it's best to err on the side of caution when it comes to lead, because such small amounts can create a toxicity, especially for children and even pets, right?
Yeah.
We don't want our pets licking up dust and eating paint
Absolutely.
chips and all that kind of stuff.
But lead paint is not available anymore in the market. We're talking about old houses
Old
that
houses,
were painted.
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see any progress in, the
I
availability
do.
of?
I
Yeah.
do actually. I think even in the 30 years that I've been at this, I have seen, like, paint was not that easy to find in the hardware store that had no VOCs, but now I can go down to my local hardware store and pick it up easily. I used to have to order it online. So I think
Yeah.
that there's definitely more options than there were. We still have a ways to go, but there's certainly more availability of organic foods than there was. Now it's become cliche, or not cliche, but trendy, right? We in the state of Vermont, we have so many farmers markets. Not all of them have, lots of organic farms, but there's at least one or two at them. And I think in other states, I've gone to, other farmers markets, and there's usually at least one or two farms that are organic. So that's better. But I think consumer awareness has changed. I think we're understanding that there's a problem here and that we need to make choices that are better for us.
Yeah, I heard like things like vote with your money, right? In terms of
Absolutely.
deciding
Absolutely.
what you want. Yeah.
Yes, because that really makes a difference, right? Manufacturers look at trends of what are people buying. So that's why organic has become so much more popular, because more people are buying it, more people are asking for it. And that's why, the big companies that are still doing the conventional stuff are also doing organic alternatives. Now, personally, I'm less inclined to want to buy that product. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, you see two sets of bananas. One has a sticker that says organic and one doesn't. And I'm thinking, well, how do I know that somebody didn't mix those up? And I'd rather go with a company that's independent and organic, which sadly there are far fewer than there used to be. But I have a list of, I can't remember how many. There's a pretty good sized list in one of my ebooks, actually. I think it's the Shopping on a Budget one, has a list of the independent organic food companies that haven't been purchased by a big corporate conglomerate. Yeah. But if you've ever seen that map, I don't know if you have, of the big food companies that own the majority of the little food companies that we think are healthy,
independent,
it'll be an eye opener.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, I would say, Yeah, I would say lies in their
Yes,
marketing, putting
absolutely.
things in a way that we believe it's good, but actually it's not. Like you say, this greenwashing, things like that. So it's very, very difficult to
I'll give you
understand everything that is going on.
I'll give you a couple of good examples. So back when in my early days of figuring all this out, I remember there was, and I think the product is still on the shelf today. There's a product that's got a green liquid and it says words like non-toxic and all this kind of stuff on the front of it. And I thought, well, that's really strange. How do they get that green coloring? Well, I came to find out that it's actually coal tar dye that makes that color. And then I found out that there was something in it called that's something butacellosol, I believe was the ingredient, but it wasn't on the label. And so it was part of the whole proprietary ingredients thing. So I used to go and get these material safety data sheets, which is short for or long for MSDS, which is all the chemical information of what's in that product, because not all the products tell you all the ingredients on the label. That's part of the trickiness. And
Yeah.
that's where you find all this information about what is in there and how toxic is that. And so that was just one example. Then my husband, who, when I first met him 16 years ago, even though he was growing organic food, he was eating a lot of junky stuff. And it was partly because he was single and he's so busy, running the farm and running himself into, exhaustion. So he would eat down at his parents' house, or he'd grab something at the local store for lunch that usually was not very good. So I had been talking to him about how important it was to hydrate because he wasn't drinking enough water a lot of the time. So this one particularly hot day, he drank, I think it was like 2 gallons of one of those sports drinks that are marketed to athletes as though they're healthy. And it's loaded with artificial colors and flavors and high fructose corn syrup. And that triggered gout. That painful condition in the big toe that feels like you have shards of glass. So he's been battling with gout ever since that experience. That was, I think, at least 5 or more years ago. And he's been pretty good in the last year or two. But oh my gosh, all these different products that are marketed as though they're healthy can actually be quite the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another thing I'm thinking of, Amy, especially for us women, and that's beauty products and shampoos and hair
Absolutely.
coloring, hair dyeing. I make most of them myself using
do
organic
you?
oil that I get from my garden and aloe vera that I get from my garden. But
That's beautiful.
a lot of us buy, the perfumes which have synthetic scents and all the things that we put on our body. I heard once, if you cannot eat it, don't put it on your face or your body, because your skin absorbs everything more than what you put in your mouth, right?
Yes, and that's even true of bathing water, so what you're showering in and you're bathing in is important. You want to know, I'm diverting off your topic here for a quick second, but you want to find out what's in your system. And if you have a well, that's one thing, you have more control. If you're on a municipal system, there is a way to find out what is in your water supply so that you can filter it out. And if you go to that ewg.org website, there's a database for the water. And all you have to do is put your zip code in. This is for the US. I don't know about other countries if there's something similar, but for the US, you can just put your zip code in and it tells you exactly what's in your water. And so that way you can filter stuff out. So but back to your question. The personal care products, especially for women, is a huge problem because we use, typically, I don't, but a lot of women tend to use a lot more personal care products and makeup than men. And there's so many different chemicals that are hidden, like you said, in perfume or even scents of these different products. They don't have to tell us what's actually making up that fragrance. Those things are typically synthetic. And I've heard that even one perfume can have 200 different chemicals in it. So avoiding anything with fragrance or perfume, if it doesn't say pure essential oils, you probably don't want to use it. And like you said, if you can't eat it, you don't want to use it.
Yeah, Helen's here, but she's traveling, but she's trying to listening. Hi, Helen. Welcome.
Yes, I saw that.
There's a replay available. If you're just joining us halfway the show or right now, there's a replay available as of tomorrow or maybe the day after, and you will be informed by that. And then you can watch the complete episode again. And maybe it's necessary because we have been talking
It's a
about
lot of
so many
information.
things.
I
Yeah, a
know.
lot of information, especially if you are listening in and you're on your way somewhere. But we will have everything covered for you. And of course, also all the information that is on Amy's website and on her
Yes.
freebies will be there available for you as well. But yeah, it's true. I mean, there's so many products that we're not aware of how toxic they are, and they have been in our lives for like forever,
Well,
right?
right. I
So
mean,
they
think
have become
about,
habits, they have become
right.
routines.
It's scary to think that even baby products have toxic chemicals. So I don't know if you are aware of the baby powder that there was a huge lawsuit because it had, I think it was asbestos was in the talc.
My
And
gosh.
and it caused, I think it was ovarian or uterine cancer in women. So, I mean, one of the things I just heard the other day that was so striking was the example of, and this is related, even though it's not going to sound like it at first. Imagine there's a car company, and this has happened. It was an American car company that had an issue with their engine catching on fire. It was a malfunction. And so they were debating between, should they recall all of these cars and fix them, or should they just wait for the lawsuits once people's engines blew up? And they decided to wait instead of recall because it was going to cost more money to recall those cars and fix them. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that is so emblematic of what happens in our consumer products industry, right?
Absolutely.
We wait for things to cause damage and for people to file suit. And, oftentimes they're already dead or their lives are completely impacted, just like
Or you can't prove the relationship, cause
that
and
too.
effect.
Right. So that happened for the longest time with that herbicide Roundup that's been used.
Yeah.
You can still buy it at the hardware store.
Yeah, you can still buy it.
There finally was a case with a groundskeeper from a school, of all places, that won the suit, which in some ways was a shallow victory because the poor man had cancer as a result of this. But they were able to prove the link between his regular exposure to this chemical and his cancer. And so, to me, I remember early on thinking, why are we not using the precautionary principle? Why aren't we erring on the side of caution instead of waiting for damage to happen? And unfortunately, our government here in particular is pretty much corporate run, right? We have all these lobbyists that are, writing the laws that our legislators then pass, which benefits them, not us. And so I feel like I've been tasked on some level with being the voice of consumers. In fact, I'm actually got invited to a big conference that I'm speaking at in July in Chicago, and it's a total industry conference. And I was shocked that they invited me, but they wanted the voice of the consumer, and it's all about food ingredients. So I think that's going to be really quite an eye-opener for me and for them. But I think that this is why it's so important for us to take the power back and learn these things so that we can make the changes. And we don't have to do it all overnight, right? We can start, like we've been saying, start with one change and build upon that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is a reality that we have, like you say, we have to take back the power because most of the organizations, most of the corporates, it is a pity and it's not a judgment. It's a reality. It's profit over people. It's profit over purpose. And in terms of ethics, there's still a long way to go. There's a lot of, there's a lot of room for improvement. And so it is about our own intentions and our own vision on what we can do, on how we can, build agency and responsibility, not only for ourselves, but also for our families and our communities and our teams in organizations, and start with these little steps and create awareness and create these little challenges and moves. And I have Miles here. Thank you. You're so welcome, Miles.
Yeah, awesome.
And just to take that responsibility, because we cannot control what happens around us.
That's
but
right.
We can control what we do, what we bring into our houses, what we bring into and up our bodies. We can. And it doesn't have to be more expensive. It doesn't have to be more difficult or more time consuming. That's a concept that we can reframe, because as you said in the beginning, Amy, it will save later.
Yes, it's an investment in our health now.
It's an investment in our health for later. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some last words.
Last words. Oh gosh. I think I want to leave people with a sense of hope. I think that, we've shared a lot of information that can be very discouraging and upsetting. And it's easy to kind of go into that place of feeling like, and people have said this to me, well, everything causes cancer. Why should I bother? And my
Mm.
feeling is that that isn't necessarily true, that we do have the ability to make these changes that can make a difference. And I'll just give you one quick example. There haven't been a lot of studies yet on this, but there is some small scale studies that show that people who have been eating conventional food and they've had their blood and urine tested, and then they go for a week on an all organic diet, the pesticide residues in their systems are gone, or at least diminished down
Yeah.
to the minuscule amounts. So it does make a difference. It's not just
Mhm.
a marketing scam. It's not just a way to, try to create another consumer product, but this is real. I mean, really, when you think about it, organic is the way that our relatives, from previous generations used to grow. It was just food.
Yeah,
But now we have to
exactly.
call it organic.
Yeah, exactly. Which, yeah, absolutely. Which is
Yeah.
crazy. That's true. Yeah, I think these regular cleansing um, periods are very, very effective. And for
Yep.
me, it also helps. That's regular sauna, which is one of my
That's true.
favorite, de-stress activities. And it's
Yeah.
cleaning. I read that it's one of the few ways also to get rid of the microplastics and other toxins in
Oh,
our
that's a
in our
toxin.
bodies. So
Yeah, we didn't even
go to the
talk about the
sauna. You
plastic.
deserve it.
Yes, yes. Actually, that is such good advice because the plastic issue is such a huge one. I don't know if you've heard the statistic that
We
we're
have to
eating.
make another episode about that one.
Yeah, we will, because we're eating and drinking about the equivalent of a credit card size of plastic per week. And it's getting into our brains, causing Alzheimer's and heart disease. And we've got to do
Yeah,
something better about the plastic issue.
absolutely. Absolutely. And go to the
Yeah.
sauna. But
Yes, the sauna and
Amy,
infrared
I'm
too.
mindful of the time.
Yes,
You have some gifts. We will mention two here today, and
yes,
I will put the
yes.
links for that in the comments for the people that are here with us live, and they will
Great.
be in the show notes for the people that are listening or watching the replay. So first of all, what I would like to share in the comments is your Calendly link for people that want to have like a, what do you call it, a strategy
Yes.
call or?
Yeah. So I'm calling it the Unlock Your Toxin Free Life Strategy call. It's a 20-minute call free. And we'll chat about, what your biggest challenges are as far as trying to eliminate toxins. And I'll give you a few different suggestions and we'll go from there. So that's free to us. I only have a limited amount of slots available to do that each week. So it's kind of a first come, first serve, but I would love to support people in moving into this healthier way of living. So that's the first one. And then the second one is the 5-day cleaner eating, non-toxic living challenge. So that gives you
I'll
a
put
quick,
the
is that
link
right?
in the chat also.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that challenge gives you a quick email once a day for 5 days, really helpful, impactful changes that you can make pretty easily and with a little background info.
Wonderful. And Helen asks the correct site for finding out what's in urban water. Is
Oh,
that
ewg.org.
ewg.org,
Yes, stands
Helen?
for Environmental
So
Working Group, ewg.org. Yep.
here you
And
go.
check for the
And
water
this
database.
is yeah, this is not all. Amy has a lot of other things for you in store. So check out her website. All the information is in the comments and in the show notes. And just learn, enjoy, connect with her, and create a better world, create a better home, create a better body that is healthy and will last longer. And that's basically what we invite you to do, right?
Yes, indeed. Thank you
Wonderful.
so
Thank you
much
so much,
for
Amy, for
thank
being
you.
here, for sharing your wisdom and for your
My pleasure.
generosity, and for everybody listening here or watching here or the replays. As we said, if you have any questions or feedback or whatever you want to share, just use the comment box. We will monitor it also later. And then basically you're good to go, and connect with Amy, connect with me, connect with us on LinkedIn if that's not the case, so we can keep you in the loop of other things and events that we are organizing for you. And have a happy home, have a happy house, have a happy body, and have a happy life. Take care and
Yes.
hope to see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.